So hello and welcome to the Lewis Nichols Show, and I'm really excited because this next guest has been so supportive with coming on my show over the last 10 years, but we've always spoke over the telephone, and this is the first time we've actually spoke face to face. Let's say hello to the lovely Kiki Dee. How are you?
I'm good, Lewis. I'm very well, thank you.
Thank
nice
you
to see your face.
I know it's been we've spoke many times, but this is the first time. I mean, how are you finding the whole lockdown? That must be difficult.
Yeah, I think I'm doing okay, actually. I feel the word I always use is grateful. I live in a village in Hertfordshire, and I can walk out of the door and be in the country, and there's not too many people around. So I'm walking a lot at the moment to try and keep strong,
Yeah.
Because, everybody's routines are out of the window, aren't they? So unless you're a key worker, of course. So yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously we spoke many times before, but it would be great to kind of talk to you about your years in the music industry. And I kind of wanted to go back for you, which was kind of, when did you first discover that, your love of music? Where did that actually come from? Did you grow up around a musical family?
Well, I'm from Bradford, Yorkshire. My brother is 7 years older than me, and he was a big rock and roll fan. And he had a lot of American records, Elvis, Fats Domino, Jerry Lee Lewis. That's when I really first got interested. I was about 10 years old, and
wow.
Discovered I could sing in tune, and carried on from there, really. And I wasn't very academic, didn't have much of an education, left school at 15, believe it or not. And the only proper job, as my music partner that I work with says to me, it's amazing, you've only had a proper job for 3 months at Boots Chemist. And so I've managed to be a professional singer all my life.
Wow. And the thing is, some people might not realize, but before your mainstream success, you had worked in the industry for years, making music. It wasn't like an overnight thing. You worked so hard for so many years. But one thing I wanted to ask you, did you actually work and sing some backing vocals for Dusty Springfield?
Yes, in the 60s. In the 60s, I got signed to a label at 16. Fontana Phillips, it was in London. Went down with my dad. We drove down and stayed in a B&B, and I did an audition, and got the part, as they say. And Dusty was on the same label, so I was asked to sing backups with her on some of her early records, which was a thrill because I was a huge fan.
What was she like to work with? What was she like as a person? Did she give you any advice, in regards to the industry?
She seemed so grown up to me. She was 7 years older than me, and I thought I think I was 16. She was, in her early 20s. And I was a little bit in awe of her, if I'm honest, and felt so much younger. But just watching her, Dusty knew what she wanted and she knew what she liked. And that was fairly unusual for women in those days. It was very male dominated, and there weren't that many women like the Madonnas, of the 80s. And now Lady Gaga and people like that who know what they want and they're quite strong about it. So I learned that from her, things like that.
And obviously we all know you as Kiki Dee, which is such a showbiz name. But is there a story with how that name come about? I mean, did someone give it to you, or did you come up with it?
Yeah, the label, when I first signed, gave it to me. They wanted to call me Kinky Dee. And I said to my dad at the time, Dad, I want to be singing in 5 years. So I don't think that's a very good name, But, it's funny because I'm the most unshowbizy person you could ever meet, and to have such an unusual name. It's quite useful, though. There aren't too many Kikis about, and it's nice to be different.
Wow, yeah, I love it. It's such a showbiz name. And I mean, another incredible thing, you know, you become the first white British artist to be signed to the US label Motown. Um, that's a big thing when you actually look at it. You know, that's such a to be the first white British artist signed to a Motown. It was kind of unheard of at that time. When you were signed, did that mean a lot to you? Did it kind of make you feel that your music was being respected, you know, in the industry?
Well, I was absolutely shocked. A phone call came into my management. This was, you know, after this was a second record deal I had. This was a one album deal to go over to Detroit and do some recordings. I was absolutely shocked, as I say, and I thought, this is it. I'm going to become a huge star now. You know, I was only 20. I went over there and I had an amazing experience, but I was only there for 12 weeks. Didn't get the hit singles, didn't get the songs. I guess I felt a little bit like an experiment, but I was treated very well. My producer, Frank Wilson, was great to work with. And I'm very proud of the work I did. You know, you look back in your mature years and you look more at the work you've achieved. You know, what do I think about that work rather than was it successful? Whereas at the time, you know, especially in those days, you really wanted the hit record. You really wanted, because being young, I thought that once I'd made it, then all the work would stop. But of course, when you make it, that's when the work really starts. So all these experiences I had, but that was very, very special in my life, you know, to go over there and do those recordings.
I mean, one experience I'd love to talk to you about is obviously a lot of people know you for your great working relationship with Sir Elton John. I mean, the respect that you two seem to have for each other, and he clearly respects you for, you know, the amount of times you've worked, you know, with him on releasing music and backing vocals. I mean, how did that partnership come about? Did he approach you? How did he, you know, get familiar with who you are as an artist?
Just like any industry, you know, the music industry. It's who you know and who you speak to on the telephone and who knows who. And I worked with his manager at the time, John Reid, who did get slagged off on the movie, but you know, he was very good manager. And he introduced me to Elton in the early 70s, and they were just starting a label called Rocket Records. And we were the same age, we were two weeks apart. And yeah, they signed me up, and we just seemed to hit it off. You know, we had the same. We both loved Motown and all the American soul music that was coming over to the UK. And yeah, hit it off with him. Don't really have much of a relationship with him now, but I know that he cares about me and he knows I care about him, and his life's gone on a completely different loop. You know, mega star.
Well, I mean, you know, you sometimes actually perform with him. We've seen you, I think it was some years ago, when he brought you on stage to sing after all these years, which was incredible. And yeah, you like you said, you can tell there's still a lot of respect and love for each other there.
Yeah, I think it's chemistry, isn't it? You know, I mean, he always was supremely talented, you know, great melody writer, great keyboard player, great voice. And great character, actually. He's one of the funniest people I've ever come across. So I'm very, very deeply fond of him. And, you know, sometimes Don't Go Breaking My Heart was difficult to recover from, if you like, you know, because it was so big and has remained to be a big song. I met Robert Plant a few years ago. He came to an acoustic gig of mine about 4 years ago. And he said to me, he said, yeah, Don't Go Breaking My Heart is your stairway to heaven.
Such an incredible
that was his song, you know, for being the one that. So, you know, but, you know, you've got to take the positives from these things. And it's always given me a career working with him. And nowadays, I just do my music and I don't really have anything to prove. And got my fan base with my music partner, Carmela, who's a brilliant guitarist. We go out and do gigs. And yeah, I didn't really want to be in my 70s and craving popularity and craving the industry. it's almost like I started so young that I've gone full circle now, and I'm doing what I maybe would have done in the first 5 years of my teenage years, which was being just an artist, you know. So I got thrown into the industry very suddenly. So now I'm living a real life, which I really like.
I mean, the thing is that I think is a lot different nowadays. Is back then, you to get a #1 record like you did with "Don't Go Breaking My Heart," you physically had to sell so many records, and you had so many other artists competing for that #1 spot. You know, it was such a big thing to get that. Whereas now, you know, it's. I'm not saying it's easier, but it, you know, it is compared to the 70s. You know, with selling records. And that kind of changed your life, as you mentioned there, you know, getting that #1, becoming such a legendary hit. Was that ever tough to deal with the fame side of things, you know, becoming a huge household name?
A little bit. But, you know, I'm lucky in that I think that the trouble with fame is it's very constricting. And instinctively, I've always tried to be a real person. I sort of a bit like Billy Connolly, you know he's famous, but you know he's for real, you know. And you know, once I got over the initial, I want to be a success, I want to be a big star, because that'll make me happy, which of course, yes, it does, but it's only temporary, you know. And then once I, you know, got down to the maturity of realizing that, you know, you've got to be who you are, and all the artists that I love are the ones that just do what they do, you know, the Joni Mitchells and the Kate Bushes, you know, they're great artists. And one aspires to do good work when you get older, you know.
And I'm not sure if it's true or not. It's something that I seen online, that originally with the song that Dusty Springfield was going to be the singer with Elton on that. Is that true, to your knowledge?
I think this, you know, I don't know where that came from. It's a bit Chinese whispers,
Yeah.
you know. I think he might have said at some point, because he does, you know, he does love Dusty's voice to this day. I'm sure he does. We all do. But I think at the time I was working with him, he produced 2 albums, no, 1 album with me, and then he was going to do another one. And I worked with him closely from 73. And it wasn't actually going to be a duet. His producer, Gus Dudgeon, came up with the idea that, you know, I was just going to do some backing vocals on it. So I don't really know where that story materialized. I do imagine it's Chinese whispers.
Yeah. I mean, there's one song of yours that I just find so empowering, and every time it's on, you just kind of rock out to it, which is "I've Got the Music in Me," because for any music fan, you just hear the actual music in the song in your voice, and you say it with so much conviction, and it's just I find it such a powerful song. Is that a song that you look back to with fond memories?
Yeah, thank you. It was a bit of a rock and roll, wasn't it? A bit of rock and roll, solely rock and roll. I'm very proud of the vocal. I'm very proud of the song. It was written by a keyboard player in my band at the time, and we were looking for songs to do live because we were going to support Elton on an American tour, the Kiki Dee band, and we didn't have a lot of. I was beginning to write a lot of gentle, slow songs, and we didn't really have any up-tempo songs in our set. So he searched his archives, the keyboard player, and found this song that had been sitting on the shelf. And of course, because we toured with Elton around the US and the UK, we got the big song, you know, which was great.
And I mean, in the late 70s, there were a couple of years in regards to songs being released and making the charts. There was not a break as such, but a silent period. And then you came back with Star, which is just an incredible track. It just doesn't age. It's one of those songs you know all the words to, and you sing it all the time. And it was different from you as well. It was more poppy, you know, than what we were used to, and it just worked. Did you ever have reservations about releasing that track because it was so different to what we had known from you?
Well, I think I've always been a bit of a mishmash, you know, a bit of this kind of thing, that kind of thing. I've got my Northern Soul fans as well, you know, from the early stuff. I'd say it's the least Kiki of the music I do today. because it's a great pop record.
Yeah.
I mean, how I hit those notes at the end, I don't know when the key change comes in, because I did all the backing vocals myself. I think, woo, they're high, you know. And it was produced by Pip Williams, did a lot of work with Status Quo, very good producer. I don't do it live because, you know, I do an acoustic show, so it's pretty impossible to do that song. But again, it's another chapter. It's a bit like being an actor in a way, you know, you do different kind of roles, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I'm so excited to talk to you about is because I am a huge Queen fan. Absolutely
right.
love them. And Freddie Mercury, I just adore. And you actually supported them, you know, on the show to hundreds, you know, 150,000 people, I believe. I mean, how did that come about? And what was it like to work with one of the biggest bands of all time?
Well, it was 1976. It was the hot summer of, and they were doing a concert in Hyde Park. And Freddie was affiliated with John Reid, who was my manager at the time. So, you know, I was asked to do a support slot. And it was great. Elton was in America, so I carried on a cardboard cutout and did the song on my own, which was quite something. But I can remember, because Hyde Park it looked like out of Africa. You know, it was completely, there was no grass on, it was just brown. Yeah. It was really hot summer. And yeah, again, it was a real thrill. So they sent me an aerial black and white photo, actually, Queen, and it said "to our number one girl," and it was an aerial shot of the stage. I actually gave it to my nephew, Jason, who's a huge Queen fan, and he's had it ever since. But again, another one of those magical things that you get to happen in your life, the moments that are special, you know.
Most people get a deodorant set for Christmas, but he gets some memorabilia from Queen. It must have made his day.
I think he was quite young when I gave it to him. He's about 53 now. Yeah, so I just thought it had to go to him, you know.
And what was Freddie Mercury like? I mean, we had his one of his best friends on the show, Peter Freestone, and the stories he told about Freddie was just incredible. I mean, what were your memories of him? Because he was such a character, wasn't he?
I didn't know him sort of personally very well. I ran into him a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And I always found him to be very gentle and very nice as a human being. Yeah, that's all I can say, really. I mean, Live Aid, the performance that he did there with Queen was I think what revived them, because they were out in the cold for a while, like ABBA were, after their initial success in the 70s. It's quite extraordinary how they came back and became national treasures. But yeah, I think, you know, you have instincts about people, don't you? And apart from his talent and his voice, which is very powerful, and his performance, he seemed to be a very, very nice person. So I liked him.
I mean, you mentioned then, of course, Live Aid. It's just, there'll never, ever be a concert like it ever again, you know, I don't think. And you, of course, were part of that. And when I've watched your performance back, and the reaction from the crowd when you come out to sing "Don't Go Breaking My Heart" is just electric. I mean, can you remember that feeling when you stepped out, you know, to sing the song? Because that reaction was just enormous.
It was funny, really, because it was almost 10 years after the record was released in 76. And there was no pressure on me that day. I could sing that song blindfold in my sleep, you know. So I just went along, you know, I didn't have the pressure of the other artists, because it was such an exposed performance that they had to give. And they were all current acts, you know. So for me, I just breezed along with my niece, and she was 16 at the time, and we had a fun day. We kept going into the celebrity bit and watching the artists, you know. I remember seeing Boris Becker there, you know, quite young boy, and just pulled on stage to do the song, did some backing vocals, I think, as well, with George Michael, I think, or Andrew Ridgeley, I can't remember. Yeah, because I believe that George did "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me" with Elton, if I remember. But it was just, again, one of those magical vignette days, if you like, where all the hard work you've done in your life, you know, comes together in something that's fun, you know, really fun to do.
And I guess when you were asked to do it, you knew it was a big concert with the names that were on the bill at the time. But did you ever anticipate it would become this legendary thing that it's become all these years later? Because everybody knows about it and people watch it all the time on YouTube and stuff like that.
Well, the thing that struck me is, you know, if you look back, technically it was, I believe, the first time that that many people from around the world had watched the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, the same TV show. To me was mind blowing. You know, of course, nowadays you can do lots of things like that, but the feeling of being seen and part of something that was global was quite magical, actually.
So one thing that we've discovered from this interview is we all need an anti-Kiki Dee, because your niece gets to go to Live Aid, your nephew's getting rare signed memorabilia. Wow.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I don't have my own children, so I make the most of them.
Yeah. So I wanted to get your thoughts really on Rocket Man, because it's a hugely successful film, and I just love it. And of course, you were played in the film as well. So did they have to ask your permission for that? I mean, how did you find out about the whole project, at first?
They don't have to have your permission, because it's, as far as I know, it's just like if someone wants to cover a song I've written, they don't have to have your permission to cover it. They might have need permission to use it in a film or something, but the actual song itself. But I was thrilled to be part of a movie, because I love film. You know, it's very glamorous, isn't it, even now? You know, and to be a character that is me, to watch it, I was quite chuffed, actually. I'm only on there for about a minute and a half, but it was nice.
Did Elton get in touch with you when the film was going out? Was there any contact there about the film?
I was told that they were going to do it, and I think I probably spoke to him, and briefly. I can't remember now, but I knew about it when it was coming out, and it was to me it looked like a stage musical. I think I could just imagine it in the West End. That would be an interesting concept. Maybe they'll do it one day.
But I mean, in recent years, you've stayed very active and busy in the music scene, and you mentioned Carmelo that you've been working with for the last quite a few years, and you've been releasing albums, you've been doing these incredible acoustic shows. How did you both meet, you and Carmelo?
We met through a gentleman called Steve Brown, who managed Billy Connolly. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he was one of the people that discovered Elton in the early days. He got Elton to turn left. Elton was writing quite poppy stuff, and I believe he discovered your song and said, that's the direction, so I'd known Steve because he ran Rocket Records, and he put us together. He came back into my life as a manager for a while, and he said, what you ought to do is work with Carmelo for a while, do some writing, and go off and do an acoustic tour. And we did. And we've been doing it for 25 years. So
that's nearly as long as I've been alive, which is incredible.
Exactly.
And I mean
we haven't had huge success commercially, but as I said earlier, it's a choice I made to stick with something and not be striving to achieve acceptance.
And the thing with that as well is you can just relax and enjoy it, and be yourself as an artist, because when you're signed to big labels, I guess they have a lot of input in what you're doing. But this is a chance where you can both just come together, with this incredible relationship, and release what you want, do what you want, and just enjoy the industry for what it is, which is, it's just fun to be part of. So you must just be having a lot of fun with this.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, I get nervous before gigs and tours.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's because you do, especially with a semi-acoustic show, there's nowhere to hide. It's not polished showbiz performance, which is choreographed. You're actually revealing who you are in your songwriting, and, but I think that's a good thing. I don't phone anything in, I'm present. We've got a new album we're just finishing off, actually, in the next month or two, which I'm very pleased with. I've I really love the songs, and as long as I love them, I sort of figure someone out there is going to love them as well, you know.
When will that be released for us to, you know, to buy?
Well, because of, you know, the COVID global problem we've all got, I don't really know at the moment. We did have to cancel all our gigs last year, and this year so far. So whether we'll do it online as a campaign online or wait till we gig, I'm not sure. But it's been lovely to have something to concentrate on and lyrics to write, you know, vocals to do. And, you know, through this lockdown, I've had something to get up in the morning for. We're back to the grateful word.
Well, do you know, every time when I listen to your more recent work, you know, some artists that you know you're a fan of in the 60s and 70s, when they release music, you kind of listen and it's not quite as good as it maybe used to be. But with your voice, it's just gone from strength to strength. You know, it's exactly what we would expect. It's full of passion, it's raw, it's full of soul. And I know you've got a huge fan base still as well that support your shows, and that must mean a lot to you after so many years to have these fans stick with your music and they love the direction that it's gone in.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, the more the merrier. You know, the more people who get our music, the better. Great, but we're sort of like a cottage industry in a way. You know, we just do our thing. But thank you for saying that. You know, it's so subjective, music, isn't it? You know, like we were talking earlier, I've got people who just love the 60s stuff I did before Motown, and then people who love the Motown, and people who love the Elton John, and people who love Star, and people who love Kiki and Carmelo. But I think it's my job to just get on with it while I can, you know, still work and sing. It's my job to get on with it, and people are going to like it or not, you know.
Well, I'm really excited for the new album, and I'm really hoping we can get past this, you know, this pandemic. And you know, because it's hard for you both. You know, you go out there and perform quite often, and to be locked down for, you know, coming up to a year now and not have these shows going on must have been difficult for you, because there's not a lot of support that, you know, you get from the government, for example. You know, I know a lot of music.
No, there isn't. No. Yeah, no. I mean, fortunately, you know, because I'm older, financially, I'm safe. So I think for a lot of people, that's, you know, with families and, you know, their jobs, it's a very difficult time for young people as well. You know, I know quite a few people who are in the mid-20s who are, you know, because your life's starting out and you're stilted, if you like.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, we'll come through it, and we're Brits and, you know, ever positive. You know, that's the way I am.
Well, Kiki, do you know, this has been an absolute pleasure. I've interviewed, you know, a couple of times on the show before, but to actually see you and just see the passion in your face when you talk is just brilliant. And that's why I'm excited for the new album, because when you see that much passion in someone, you know it's going to be brilliant.
I'll let you know, and you can tell me what you think, because I think the songs are really good.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks, Lewis.
Thank you.
See you soon. Take care.